This video is sponsored by this month's craft. Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello! My name is Caroline and I make sewing tutorials and sewing patterns to help you along your sewing journey. And for today's video, I'll be teaching you how to make an A-line skirt with the side slit. I'll show you how to make the pattern for the skirt and also how to sew it from start to finish. I'll be making mine a little bit longer as a midi-length skirt, but the length is totally customizable. You can make it as short or as long as you like. One of my previous videos was a pattern making tutorial. I showed you how to draft a basic skirt block using your own body measurements, but I thought about making a follow-up video and show you how to use the basic skirt block to turn it into a garment. Because the basic block doesn't have any seam allowances or any specific design details. It's just a basic skirt. So today I'm gonna show you how to transform the basic skirt block into an actual skirt that you can wear. So not only I'll show you in practice how and where to add seam allowance, I'll also add some design details to the skirt. This one will be longer, will be flared, will have a side slit on one of the legs, and also a waistband. And after we're done with the pattern making, I'll show you how to sew the skirt from start to finish. There are some materials that you need for this project. To make the skirt, you will first need fabric. The type of fabric that you choose will depend on the style of the skirt that you want, but I'll make mine with rayon viscose. A few videos ago, I made a short denim skirt. The pattern is very similar. I just didn't make a waistband that time because I didn't have enough fabric. But you can make this design with a thicker fabric if you like, but today I'll make mine with a really lightweight fabric because I want a really flowy look. And I'm pretty tall, so I think 1.5 meters is more than enough to make it for me. But if you're making a bigger size, then you might need more fabric than this. You also need an invisible zipper. Mine is 20 centimeters long, and also a piece of fusible interfacing for the waistband. The interfacing is optional, but it will make the waistband sturdier. And to make the pattern, you need a basic skirt block. If you haven't watched that video yet, I'm going to link it in the description. You also need pattern making paper and a ruler. The very first step is to transfer the basic skirt block to another piece of paper. You should transfer the hip line and also the darts as well, as I did here. This is basically the same thing that I showed you how to make before. The only difference is that it's half the scale, so this is half the size of the original pattern. Since this is just for a demonstration, I decided to make it half the size, just so I could fit the whole thing on the camera. So whenever you see me telling you a measurement and then marking half of it using the ruler, that's why, because this is half the size. So I am going to divide every measurement that I say in half. So don't get confused with that, just follow what I'm telling you, not the measurement that I actually mark using the ruler. I glue the paper and I'm going to draft on top of it just because I feel like the white paper makes it easier for you to see. But the next step is to measure from the waist, the center front waist, down the total length of the skirt that you want. I'll be making mine a medium length and I'm very tall, so for me that would be 90 centimeters. So I'm going to measure 90 centimeters from the center front. And I'll also extend the side seam just as a guideline and connect both of them. Now you need to decide how flared you want your skirt to be. The bigger measurement that you add here, the more flared it will be. So I'm going to add 15 centimeters to the side of the skirt, but that is up to you. If you're making a bigger size, you can make it even wider. I'm moving it upwards a little bit just to make sure that you can see, but I extended 15 centimeters on each side. And I will connect the waist to the hem. And I'll measure the same length that we put here from the waist to the side, minus 1 centimeter. And I'll connect this side to the bottom using a slight curve. But make sure you leave the center as a straight line for a little bit before adding the curve. Now we'll extend the central line here of the dart until it reaches the hem. And I will finish my skirt with a waistband at the top, but that is optional. You can also use a facing, for example, but since I'll be making a waistband, I'm going to separate the waistband now. I want my waistband to be 3.5 centimeters wide, so I'm going to measure from the center waist down 3.5 centimeters, and I'll also measure 3.5 centimeters here. And I'll connect it with a curve. And I'm gonna cut the pattern pieces. Before separating the center front and the side front, it's important for us to mark where the slit will start. So you can measure it on your body from your waist down, and that includes the waistband here. You can measure from the waist down where you'd like the slit to start, and you can do a little mark in here before separating. And I'm just going to eliminate this dart by cutting it off. But if you don't want to add a slit, for example, you can just eliminate the dart by transferring this volume right here to the hem. So you would glue it here and the dart will disappear, and also you have a lot more volume at the bottom. That's an option, you can do it if you want. But I'll just eliminate my dart like this when we sew them right sides together. And this is our center front. We have to cut one on fold. This is the grain line and this is our fold line. So we're going to place this part right here on top of the fold of the fabric. And this is our side front skirt. This is the grain line. And we have to cut two of those that are mirrored images of each other. So one like this and one like this. And for the waistband, we're going to eliminate the dart as well. I'll glue it right here. I'll cut away any possible weird shapes. And this is my front waistband pattern, and I'm going to place this part right here on fold, and I'm going to cut two of them on fold. I did the same thing to the back waistband. The only difference with the front and the back is that we're not going to place this part right here on the fold because I am actually going to add a back zipper. So we're going to add seam allowance to the center back. And since we're adding a zipper to the center back, we have to add a seam here. So I'll add seam allowance to this part. And instead of cutting two waistbands on fold, I'm actually gonna have to cut 4, so 2 pairs. And for the back skirt, you can also do what I did to the front, which is to transfer the volume of the dart to the hem, making it more voluminous, but I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to sew the dart closed, but that's up to you. And how to decide where to add the seam allowance. So as I explained to you before on the basic skirt block video, you have to add seam allowance to wherever there will be a seam. We're going to sew the bottom of the front waistband to the top of the skirt, so we need to add seam allowance here. And this part will be cut on the fold, so we do not need to add seam allowance, but we'll add a zipper to the center back. So we need to add seam allowance to the center back, and we'll sew one waistband to the other at the top and at the sides. So we need to add seam allowance to the top and to the sides. And at the hem, we also need to add hem allowance because we're going to fold it inwards and top stitch it to hem. I personally prefer to add 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch for my seam allowances, but some pattern makers add more, like 1.5 centimeters, or depending on where you're adding the seam allowance, sometimes you can add less, but for this design right here, I think 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch is more than enough. And we're also going to need to cut interfacing for both waistband pieces. So we're gonna cut one interfacing for the front, and that will be cut on the fold, and 2 mirrored back waistband pieces. And now that the pattern is finished, all we have to do is sew. I'm actually working on making a graded version for this design to add to my shop. And hopefully by the day this video is uploaded, I'll already be done. And I'll need pattern testers, of course. So if you'd like to receive the pattern for free to test it and give me feedback, you can apply to help me out. I'll leave a form in the description of the video. But before I show you all the steps to sew the skirt, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the sponsor of today's video, this month's craft. As you guys know, sewing has been a hobby of mine for so many years. I love creating things, it gives me so much joy, but sometimes I kind of want to take a little break from sewing because lately that's basically all I ever think about. And finding a different hobby, getting all the supplies, gathering tutorials, it can be a bit overwhelming because there's so many options out there. That's why this month's craft seemed perfect for me for this moment in my life, because they offer subscription boxes that make it easy for everyone to explore a new hobby every month. Everything you need to get started comes in one box, from the materials to the step-by-step instructions. It is great for anyone, but mainly for people who want to try something new, but still cannot come up with the type of craft they want to do. And they have 2 box choices, the creative box and the DIY box. The creative box is perfect for those who enjoy soothing and artistic crafts, like embroidery, pottery, soap making. And the DIY box is ideal for hands-on makers that are interested in projects like woodworking and sauce making. I personally chose the creative box because I think the style is more aligned with the types of projects that I like. The box I received was to create a pottery project with air dry clay, and inside the box I had all the materials I needed for the project, the instructions, the clay, the proper tools, acrylic paints and paintbrushes. In the end, I made a coaster and a little plant pot. It was my first time ever handling air dry clay, but overall it was real fun. Crafting is one of the easiest ways to boost my mood. And if you're interested in joining me, I'll link this month's craft website in the description of the video. The few first of you who use my code Coraline20 will get a 20% discount on your first box, and you can start, pause, or cancel your subscription at any time. Thank you, this month's craft, for sponsoring today's video, and now let's learn how to sew the skirt. The very first step is to apply fusible interfacing to the waistband pieces. You should interface one front waistband and two back waistbands. Place the fusible side, the side with the glue, of the interfacing to the wrong side of the waistband and press with an iron. Then transfer the back darts to the back skirt panel using chalk or an erasable pen. Pin the darts right sides together and sew them closed. Don't backstitch at the end of sewing, just leave a long tail of thread and tie a knot instead. Then iron the dart towards the center back. Finish the edges of the center front, side front, and center back with an overlocker. Place the center front skirt and side front skirt right sides together. On the side you like to add a slit, sew from the top up until the notch. And on the side you don't want to add a slit, sew from the top up until the hem. Make sure to backstitch the slit side a few times to secure the seam. Press the seam open on both sides from top to bottom. Then top stitch the seam allowance. It will be as if we're hemming the slit. Place the front skirt with the right sides up and place the back skirt pieces on top, with the right sides facing down. Pin them at the sides and sew 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch away from the edge. Finish the seam with an overlocker or a zigzag stitch. Place the front and back waistband pieces right sides together and sew at the sides, 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch away from the edge. Then press the seam open. The side of each waistband pattern piece has a notch in the middle so you don't get confused. Place the interfaced and the non-interfaced waistband pieces right sides together, pin them at the top and sew with the 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance in the middle. Turn the seam allowance towards the non-interfaced waistband piece and stitch the seam allowance to it, 0.6 cm away from the seam line. This is called understitching and it will help keep the inner waistband in place. Finish the bottom of the non-interfaced waistband piece. You can overlock or zigzag stitch, or finish it by folding it 0.8 cm inside. Folding it will make it look neater and more professional, but it will be harder to catch the bottom when you top stitch the waistband. So if you're a beginner and you're not super confident, I recommend finishing with an overlocker or a zigzag stitch instead. Press the top of the waistband pieces wrong sides together to set the panels in place. This is really important if your interfacing is considerably thicker than your fabric. Iron the waistband down and make sure the interfaced waistband piece is showing through the non-interfaced waistband by around 0.2 cm. Place the skirt with the right sides facing up. To help you out, you can make a cut right in the middle of the front skirt and right in the middle of the front waistband as well. Start pinning the bottom of the interfaced waistband to the top of the skirt, right sides together. Match the center cut and the side seams when pinning. Sew with the 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then trim the interface seam allowance in half. Iron the seam allowance upwards. Then pin the invisible zipper to the right side of the center back seam. Match the plastic stop of the zipper to the seam where both waistbands are connected. Finish sewing the invisible zipper to both sides of the back skirt. If you have never sewn an invisible zipper before, I have a detailed video tutorial on my channel. I'll link it in the description. Fold the leftover zipper tape to the side, then fold the non-interfaced waistband down, right sides together, covering the zipper tape. Stitch the sides with a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Trim the top corner of the waistband and the leftover zipper tape to reduce bulk. Then turn the waistband right sides out. Fold the non-interface waistband down, covering the seam allowance. Make sure the seam allowance is still positioned upwards after ironing and that the waistband is laying flat. If you finished with an overlocker, the non-interface waistband will go past the seam around 1 cm. But if you chose to fold the bottom instead, now is the time to do it. Make sure to fold the bottom of the waistband around 0.8 cm before pinning it down. The folded edge must cover the stitch line, which is the seam joining the skirt to the interface waistband. With the waistband well secured with lots of pins, take your skirt to the sewing machine and with the right side of the skirt facing upwards, stitch in the ditch. When I say stitch in the ditch, I mean to aim to sew right inside the seam of the waistband while catching the non-interface waistband in the back. Hem the bottom of the skirt by overlocking the edge and folding it 0.8 cm inside. If you don't have an overlocker, you can hem it by folding the hem inside twice and top stitching. This next step is completely optional, but if your waist circumference fluctuates a lot during the day or during the month, you can also add a piece of elastic to the back waistband. When sewing the waistband, leave a space of around 3 fingers close to the center back seam without sewing on both sides. If you have already sewn the waistband, you can also seam rip the opening instead. Cut 2 pieces of elastic, a little bit smaller than the back waistband. My waistband here is 3.5 cm wide, so the elastic must be slightly thinner than that. Mine is 2.5 cm wide. Use the opening to insert the elastic to the waistband. Feel the elastic with your fingers until it passes the side seam of the waistband. Hold the elastic in place with your fingers or pins and stitch in a ditch inside the side seam to secure the elastic in place. Stretch the elastic until it reaches as close as possible to the zipper. Hold it in place with your fingers or pins and stitch the elastic in place. Try the skirt on and check if the elastic fits well. If you don't need to alter it, stitch in the ditch again to sew the opening of the waistband close. And there you have it, your skirt is finished. So this is it for today's video. I really hope you liked this tutorial, and if you make yours at home, don't forget to tag me on Instagram so I can see it too. Also, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I hope to see you guys around next time as well. Bye!